Good evening and welcome to the April 13th, 2021 Northern Lebanon School District Board meeting. I call this meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded. Thank you for joining us virtually this evening. Please know that all webinar community member participants will remain on mute during the meeting unless they have put in a request to speak during the public comment period. Those wishing to make public comment were asked to submit that request by 4 o'clock this evening. Director Klein will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you please join me in a moment of silence? Thank you.
Mrs. Martin, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Gray,
Here.
Erdman,
Here.
Fowler,
Here.
Marlowe, Murray,
Here.
Klein,
Here.
Sekelic, Nam,
Here.
Bucks,
Here.
Director Sekelic absent, all other members present.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
Second.
Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. Moving on to item 3, we have several presentations this evening. The high school students of the month for April are Sarah Demakowitz and Matthew Getz. This award is sponsored jointly by the Fredericksburg and Jonestown Lions Club, and each recipient will be recognized at a future meeting of the Lions Club. The middle school student of the month for April is Ethan Hughes. This award is sponsored by the Northern Lebanon County Rotary Club, and each recipient will be recognized at a future meeting of the Rotary Club. Congratulations to all 3 of those students. Do we have our student board representative online, Eileen Zumba? All right, we'll try to come back to her. We have a presentation by our Family and Consumer Sciences teacher, Ms. Fry.
And while she's coming, I'll talk a little bit about this. Ms. Fry, I believe, is going to talk to us about something she had done in a previous district. It would not be for this year, it'd be something for us to think about. Were you thinking next year? Is that what you were thinking? Okay. And if we do approve this, I am volunteering to chaperone.
Is your mic on? Push the button.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I am Amanda Fry. This is my first year here at Northern Lebanon. I come from Pittsburgh. During COVID, my husband lost his job and we moved here, and through the graces, I was able to find an opening and applied, and just loved the interview. I loved, speaking with Bill and Gary, and they were asking me some things that I did at my old district to build enthusiasm for our program and our students, and this is one of them. It's called Cook Around the World. It is presented by Walt Disney World. I have taken 2 trips down there so far, and then we had one planned for last year, but that got canceled. And this is run by World Class Vacations. It's actually right here in Allentown. And their purpose for this program is, obviously, it's an international culinary competition. There were students from Honduras the last time we were there. From Puerto Rico, they were there. So it's an international competition. They usually have a celebrity chef come in. The 2 years I was there, it was Richard Blaze and Damaris Phillips. And they work with the kids one-on-one when they come around to judge. They talk to them, they show them techniques, talk about what they plan to do in the culinary field. We also get the Disney Parks experience, and they talk a lot about the culinary education programs available to the students in Florida. They're also do the Disney College internships. They talk about those, how the students can apply once they're in college, what they offer, the benefits of working for Disney. So it's a very comprehensive program for the kids, just the fact that it's also Disney. So this is a short video that they put together, and my first group of students actually appear in it twice. So it's kind of cool to see them on there. So. Those are my boys. And those were my kids. It's in Epcot Center. If you're not familiar with Epcot Center, they have Canada, and then they have this great big gate that you never know what's behind. Well, behind it is this massive, what they call pavilion, and that's where it's held. And then on the other side of that is Great Britain. The kids fundraised so hard to get there, and we always laugh because these kids, both teams sold buffalo chicken dip during lunches, during special events, during sporting events, anything they could sell, they sold buffalo chicken dip. And they said, how many gallons of buffalo chicken dip does it take to get to Disney? And they would tell you hundreds. So they worked really hard at the fundraising. And you can go ahead and just slide through. They're just pictures of the kids and some of the things that they get to experience down there. For most of those first 8 that went, we actually won that year. And it was such an amazing experience. We walked in there and there were culinary students from actual culinary high schools in Florida. And they had the chef stuff on, and we were in our jeans and our t-shirts that said Ringgold High School on them. And we were going up. And this cupcake here that she's holding, we did a whole Lady in the Tramp theme, and she piped it to look like spaghetti with strawberry sauce and chocolate meatballs. Disney used that this year or last year during Valentine's Day. They took that idea from one of my students and used it. So it was kind of like, I showed her the picture on Facebook and she started laughing. She's like, I want royalties. So it's just an experience. The kids have to think outside the box. They have to think on their feet. They have to set goals to get to Disney, to get fundraising. For a lot of them from that first 8, as you can see, we won. 4 of them had never been on a plane. 5 of them had never been to Disney. We were from actually it's a pretty large district in Washington County, but it was depressed. So the kids worked really hard to get there. And as you can see, we're in our jeans and unprofessional garb, but yet we were able to persevere and go through. This is the second group we took. It grew almost by double. We had 16 go this year. 2 of them weren't in the pictures, but we had a larger group go. And it helps to build the family consumer science program because the kids get excited about it. And we fed this off of our CHOP competitions that we did every year. So the kids kind of were like, oh, we want to go to Disney. We want to win, just like the first group did. So it's a good building block for the program, as well as personal growth for the kids. I know you guys have a packet that I had presented to you, and if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. There's an agenda of what we would be doing when we're down there. We get 4 or 5 days in the park, depending if you want to extend the stay. There's a gala dinner after the competition where you do get to meet with Disney chefs, their hotel executives. There's also a hospitality spin if someone was interested in learning about hospitality instead of the culinary. And then we went to Universal for a day, because in my classroom, we did it's called gamification of the classroom, where we do a tournament through our labs and programs that we do. And it was based on, since my love of Harry Potter, so it was based on Harry Potter. So the kids had a tournament throughout the semester based upon their culinary skills. So we also went to Universal as well to kind of tie that in.
And obviously, guys, if you want to take this along and look through it and you have questions, we can invite Amanda back, or I can get answers to questions throughout the next few weeks.
I have a question now. What types of things do the students prepare ahead of time? Do they have to prepare any dishes that they will, or develop any dishes that they will prepare when they get to Disney? And how often are they cooking when they're there?
We do the one competition, but leading up to it, there are practice sessions for the kids. Disney tells us what we have available to us to use. It's sort of in the lines of Chopped. They'll tell you, we have these vegetables, we have these staple ingredients, we have this protein. They will assign you a protein, but you don't know that till you get there. So you have to have a couple of ideas ready to go. They assign, since it's called Cook Around the World, they assign you a country. We had Europe the first time, and then we had Africa the second time, which was very difficult because you can't make African food look pretty, and that's what they were kind of looking for. And then this last time we had been assigned North America, but we didn't get to complete that one. But the kids have to develop their own dishes. They have to know going in. They do have assigned jobs. Someone is on protein, someone's on sides, someone's have every specific job.
Thank you.
How many kids could go?
You can take as many as want to go. It is pricey, so that does limit it. We have sent out a feeler to see what we would have, and we had 18 students at the high school who said that they would be interested to hear more information. And then we had about 6 or 7 8th graders who would be freshmen next year who were interested in going. So
what's the deadline for us to sign up?
to take advantage of some of the programs they have, it is May 1st. But she said we could sign a no obligation contract with them. And as long as we let them know before December 10th, there's no financial obligation.
Okay.
About how many schools go to compete?
The first year we went with 55. This past year it was 84, the last time we went. And they broke it up into 2 sessions. They had a morning session and an afternoon session. And then they picked winners from each session. So it wasn't like you were competing against people you didn't see during the competition. But I did give you a detailed itinerary. Obviously, the flights and stuff would be based closer to 6 months out of what we could get. But I also give you a cost breakdown of what it includes. The price that I give the parents is the final price, and that includes all food except for on the travel down and the travel home, because I can't I can't manage that unless I give the kids cash. But what we do is we buy gift cards for Disney and give the kids a gift card every day so that they don't lose them. So they're given a card every day. And this is for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then if they have extra, then they can use it on souvenirs or whatnot. The kids can also fundraise their spending money. We keep track in an account that says they have X amount of dollars. If they overpay, then they can get that money as spending money. I will say World Class Vacations and Disney were very gracious about the COVID issue. Everything was fully refunded. There were no fees taken out. They refunded everything. Every student got every penny back. And they have a similar insurance this year as well. It will cover everything. If they have to quarantine because they were exposed, it falls under the medical one. If Disney shuts down again, that falls under the COVID plan they have. So they've tried to cover all of their bases.
If a student finds out midway through their fundraising that they're unable to raise the money, I assume that money is not refunded.
By law, fundraising money cannot be given to students. We keep track separately. Monies they've paid in and monies they've fundraised. All monies paid into that point is refunded up to, I think it's December 10th.
Okay,
Everything can be refunded. Someone can buy them out as well.
okay.
Fundraising monies go into a general account, or if they're involved in other activities in the school, we can transfer it to that account, but we can't refund fundraising monies.
All right, well, thank you. And sad story, I have not been to Disney. My family went when I was 18 without me, and
Well, then we have to go.
I stayed home to play in a state baseball championship game. So it was probably my decision, I'm sure, but I never got to go. So I need to learn to cook between now and I guess next.
I've been in contact. They did change the week this year. We have the exact dates this year, and it's April 29th through May 3rd, I believe. And I know that's close to Northern Lebanon's prom, but I've been talking to Julie Byler about the date, and they don't have anything planned. So she said we can try and work some stuff out.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Amanda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have our student board representative yet? Okay. All right, then we do have a presentation by our Director of Business Affairs, Leanne Martin.
Hello. Thanks, Kirk. Okay, and I can't believe I'm presenting on a 21 to 22 budget already, but here we are. So we'll just go through this, and I wanted to highlight some dates for you all that are coming up that we will be doing. So May 11th, we will adopt the proposed final budget, and May 12th, it will be available for public inspection, and we'll be posting on the website at that time as well. And then on June 1st already, we'll be adopting the final budget, and we always approve the homestead farmstead exclusion with that as well. And then the deadline for the business office is July 15th to get that into PDE through the internet. All right, this is just where we are currently at with our fund balances. You can see the past here. And one thing I want to highlight that is very positive is our food service fund, that we have been decreasing that deficit there. And our general fund, we on June 30th, 2020, as the auditor said when they presented, we have a $4.3 million balance. And our revenue projections for the budget, we are coming in at a $42.611 million for revenue coming in. And that does include a 3.8% tax increase, which is our adjusted index. And you can see that there, the millage rate at the top of 14.6623, that is the max amount. And what this includes is the new LRTA money at the current tax rate is $204,000. And it also includes ESSER grant funding for 21-22. And we are projecting that at 2.5 million. I believe Gary sent out in an email to you previously. And unfortunately, at this time, we are budgeting and expecting for our state funding to be level funded for a second consecutive year. So we aren't expecting that to be increasing. And these are the expense trends. And as you can see, our total for the budget is at $42.2 million. So that is approximately a $2 million increase from last year's budget. And I will go into that in greater detail and what's included there on the next slide. So some of the additions that we put in to this were obviously the new bond payment, which we are all expecting. And with that, it's the net of the two, because we did refinance in the fall. So we experienced approximately $95,000 in savings in our old money that we had. And then the new bond payment would have been about 685,000. So the net of those two, we are increasing our bond payment in the budget by about $590,000 for next year. We added a line item for professional development and textbooks for $150,000. Our salaries increased approximately $566,000 to the new budget. Our maintenance department is requiring a new dump truck, which we had already discussed here previously, and we did get $18,000 on a trade-in. So we will be expecting to spend $44,000 on that. We have gone over this in the past, the budgetary reserve for $200,000. That line item is in there again. And then one other item is the new staff laptops. And we have always previously done rentals and leases on these, well, for as long as I've been here anyway. And this year we are looking at purchasing those laptops in anticipating that we will get longer life use out of them. And Kirk is hoping that we get 4 to 5 years out of those for this price. So we have that in the budget, and that also includes docking stations for those, for every staff member to have. And we also had to increase our charter school line item. Unfortunately, this year currently, we are over budget already, so we had to increase and plan on that also staying higher for next year. And then with our V3 Academy, we are over budget on that item as well. Our attendance in that has obviously increased this year with COVID. And what we are doing is kind of a staff shift here, and I believe Gary has spoken to you guys about this. You saw the posting for some virtual teachers to help with this and hopefully cut down on the labor costs for that, but we will still need to have that in our line item in our budget. And then we have leftover money of, I don't want to say leftover, but that will be going into our fund balance of $400,000. So the difference between the revenue and the expenses is the $400,000.
Now, I want to speak to some of those, Leanne, just to piggyback off of things. Just a couple of reminders. First of all, that new bond payment, if you recall, we knew for 2 years we were going to have the increase in bond payment before we see the savings at the elementary school, because we obviously have not moved in there and cannot reduce staffing yet at that point. We are starting to see, we've had a retirement of a classroom teacher at the elementary level. Staffing projections look like that person will not need to be replaced. So obviously it's easier for us if through attrition we can line this up so that, you know, we're in a better place when we go to move over there. But we knew we'd have the bond payment for a couple of years before we have the savings. Professional development and textbooks, that is something that, if you recall, was in last year's budget. We cut it. I'll be honest with you, there has not been money for professional development and textbooks for 3, 4, 5 years.
Well, I've been here for 5 and I haven't seen it.
Okay. And, I believe in professional development, and I believe in looking at a curriculum cycle, which Mr. Reese is working on for me. We're going to make it an administrative regulation, to be honest, where we are constantly evaluating in a cyclical manner our curriculum, updating it, making adjustments and purchases when necessary to renew it, or to renew things or buy new resources. And so, that is an expense that I feel strongly about if we can, get that in there. Obviously, we got sidetracked last year by it, but it's something we'd like to see get back in there. From a salary standpoint, as you know, just from pure contract negotiations in the CBA, when you look at salaries, they go up every year. We have a job to do before our May board meeting, and that is to set percentages for classified and for administrative staff for next year. When we have those percentages set, Leanne will adjust the budget. But as of now, I think she went off of last year's, you correct me if I'm wrong, last year's numbers for administrative staff and 3% for classified, I think is the current projection that you used. But that is not finalized until we vote on that in May. The dump truck may or may not wind up in this year. We have our eyes on one, and I think it's a done deal, but we're not going to pay until we get delivery, and they're projecting sometime over the summer, so it may or may not go. It is in his budget, but it may still sneak into this year's. The budgetary reserve is something we've done in the past. And that's kind of your safety net in case there's unexpected expenses. The laptops, I want to thank Mr. Kless. There was a lot of frustration on my part with technology because sitting in a situation where we are signing 3-year or multiple year agreements, including the lease of computers, and every single teacher computer and every single docking station that we own is getting returned on June 30th. Am I correct in that, Kirk? Yeah. And so we wind up in a situation where we're paying $70,000 a year for computers. And I don't think that counts. I don't think that, does that include the docking stations?
The docking stations are also leased as well.
Okay. We're paying for these, sorry. Okay. We're paying for these, but then at the end of these, and there's been some difficulties with them as well, but at the end of this, we're returning them and there's nothing to show for them. Whereas we believe our life cycle can be expanded on these computers. And the same thing, and it's not on here, but the same thing goes for some of our software programs that we purchased 3-year or multiple year agreements on. And the bad part about this from a budgeting standpoint is that they were purchased when the initial expense occurred. Some of these software programs were purchased without them being in the budget as a reoccurring expense. So you get to this point where we spend $40,000 on software programs, but it's not in the budget. And we need to make sure, even if it's over 3 years, fine, but then we need to account for that. We're actually going to propose at the end of this talk about something that we've talked about for maintenance, and that's a capital projects fund, but doing the same kind of thing for technology. So the expenses that only occur 3 or 4 years, we're consistently putting money into a capital projects fund for technology. And then when it comes time for major purchases, then we have that there to pull out of. So the budgeting, from the budgeting process, it would be a more consistent number, but then it's there to pull out of when we need to replace things. Obviously, I think charter schools and the increase there is understood, but that's something I want to combat with some of the ideas I've already started to mention with V3. The virtual teachers is going to be, overall, I believe we're going to be able to reduce salaries when it comes to V3, but the virtual teacher component is that the 2 elementary positions that we talked about. I will tell you that we are paying one of our V3 teachers right now who is not currently on staff, $67,000 projected for the year for just elementary things. And that's just one of, we looked at the other day, Pat, how many elementary teachers do we have? 4 or 5? 4 or 5. Now they're not all that high, but we're spending a lot of money in that area, and that does not include 6th grade. So those virtual positions, if you remember, are going to be K-6, and we've already broken this down by teacher, we've broken it down by enrollment, and we've broken it down by how much money that we're spending on each of the courses, so that we can wisely choose courses to look at for next year through our typical schedule. And I talked about this a little bit, and we're going to talk about it more down the road at our retreat, but some synchronous opportunities for our V3 kids, both at the elementary school and at the middle and high school. And I think that synchronous opportunity, particularly in elementary, to have a teacher that they see every day, that they want to see every day. I mean, if they can't, that's fine, but they're there every day to check in. I think that is huge for our kids. It's been one of the biggest complaints that we've had in terms of our V3 program. So that's what that is. And then the excess essentially of the ESSER grant, which is listed at the top there, is slated to go back into fund balance there. But I just wanted to hit some of that stuff because we've talked about it and I've sent emails, but I haven't necessarily been able to say it in a board meeting. So I appreciate you letting me talk.
Thanks, Gary. And I wanted to point out that one area where we have been fortunate is our healthcare. We are going on our 3rd year of budgeting the same amount for our healthcare cost, which is incredible because, the industry standard, I have said it many times, is 8 to 12% increase each year. So that is very fortunate for our district that we can continue to do that and our staff is healthy and that the self-insured method is working for us at this point. Last year's budget, we had in the track resurfacing project for $450,000. And as you are all well aware, we have been doing the cafeteria fund transfers every year, and we have taken those line items out of the budget. We do have in there a safety net of $25,000 to transfer to the cafeteria because at this point, this current year, we are operating at a loss with only half of the students at secondary most days. And not being able to sell a la carte and serve up food the way we have in the past, we are not covering the costs of labor and such things. So we are having a loss in the cafeteria, and I will budget just in case next year. I don't know what we're exactly going to be looking like in the cafeteria. So I do have that in there as just a safety net. This is the Lebanon County millage rate comparison. And as you can see, once again, Northern Lebanon, even last year with doing the highest increase, we are still below everybody else in the county. And at the bottom, I have noted that the 21-22 millage rate, the max index that we can do is the 3.8%. And even doing that, our millage rate would be the 14.6623, which is still less than anyone else in the county for this current year. And I know that this has been popular to see in the past, and we all appreciate seeing what this would impact the average homeowner in our district. And for the 21-22, you can see at a 2% increase, it would be $49 over the prior year's taxes for each house. And at the max increase of taxes, it would be $95 per household for the average homeowner in the Northern Lebanon School District. And along the top there in blue, you can see the additional revenue that it would create for the district at each tax rate. So Gary and I have spent some time, and he did highlight that on the previous slide, some items that we would like to consider, and that would be the capital projects fund so that we can try to get ahead now that we are purchasing the laptops and then budget a smaller amount each year into the capital projects fund, along with putting money in there for capital projects that would come into buildings and grounds. And one other item, I know I just said that we have been extremely fortunate with our healthcare, that we have been level for the last for going on a third year. But we do need to consider at some point potentially increasing the healthcare reserve fund up above the $500,000 that we currently have, just in case we do have a bad year with our healthcare. Because I'm sure you're all aware, but there can be some cases where they just go over and the $500,000 could be wiped out in 1 or 2 years if we would have a bad year. So that is something that we need to keep in the back of our minds, that we should be building upon that.
I just want to highlight a couple more things and then open it up. One is that, when the ESSER money is great, but it's one-time funds, and we understand that. When the state continues to level fund us, that makes it really hard. As you see salaries going up, $500,000. Obviously for us, looking at making some building improvements, when the state's not increasing, it makes it tough to keep up without the tax thing. And that's a difficult position to be in. Secondly, understand that, this is over the next, whatever questions you have tonight, ask, certainly, over the next month. Feel free to contact Leanne or myself at any point in time. I know Director Marlowe likes the pivot tables and the Excel spreadsheets, so we can get you that. Anybody else that likes to tinker with Excel, we can certainly make sure that you get that as well. But over the next month, feel free to holler and ask any questions that you might have. But other than that, if anybody has questions for Leanne tonight, fire away.
Leanne, can you just go back to, I think it might have actually been in the first slide that highlighted the end fund balance. I think it was I think it might have been
Going.
the
There we
very
go.
first.
Thanks, Kirk. And we will work on preparing, Gary and I just discussed it today, to get you where we're projecting our fund balance to be at the end of June 30th, 2021. We're working on those numbers for you.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's what I was looking for. Sorry. Thank you.
After our discussion today, we are projecting, and budget-wise, it's a little difficult to do because Leanne has some stipulations from a state standpoint, but because she has to build off of what she submitted from last year. If you remember last year, we budgeted to take money out of fund balance this year to pay for some one-time expenses. The track actually was supposed to be this year. It actually wound up getting on the prior year's budget. So we actually believe not only, this is a preliminary, we talked about it today thing, so I don't want to get people too excited, but at the same time, I felt good about it, that we probably won't need to take out a fund balance this year, and may even have a little extra so that our fund balance wouldn't decrease. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, it's an accurate statement of what we discussed.
I have a question, and correct me if I'm wrong here. Am I correct that each year we spend about 1.5 million on charter schools? Is that the right number? If I recall, it's like almost 5% of our total budget.
Yes, we are already over that this year. I did write a note on that. Give me 1 second here.
I guess what I'm getting at is we have a predicted increase of 350,000 for charter schools for next year. Is that making the assumption that all of the kids in charter schools this year go on to next year, or that we actually see an increase in numbers next year again?
It's predicting that it's going to stay steady for it. We had currently budgeted $900,000 in this year's budget, and we are already at like I want to say like 165 is what I had seen. So we did increase that by $350,000, assuming that we are going to be paying out the rest of the school year yet for those students. And then, like I said, that's what we budgeted for next year, is a $350,000 increase on top of that $900,000.
So all of the students in charter school this year would continue on till next year. Okay. And I forget how many pre-COVID versus now, what was the increase into charter schools? I know we saw these numbers and I cannot recall them.
It was in the 70s, maybe 80 at one point. It's now 126, I think.
So
Is that about
80-ish to
Well, not
120?
the increase necessarily. I think it was at one point, the 1 month we looked at it, Director Marlowe, I think it was 78 to 126. Does that sound right?
It does. Yep. Yeah. Last year, before all this happened, we were steady in the 70s, I would say.
Right.
And now we're in that 120s range.
Right.
So to add on to your question, we're anticipating we will not see those students come back. So we're budgeting as if they will stay in charter.
Oh, come back to the physical school.
Preparing for that, however, right, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we will talk more. I'd be glad to talk about it, but we need to continue every year. I think we made a step forward with the additional course offerings last year. I think we saw some strengths and weaknesses with Accelerate. I actually believe that in some cases, our own teachers can do a better job. Looking at a couple of different options to even use programs like Accelerate and be able to import their content into our Schoology platform, which will be great for our kids because then they don't have to go back and forth between platforms. And I just believe that the synchronous component of this is going to be a humongous resource for our kids that parents are going to have to at least consider. So.
How many years has it been since we've seen an increase in state funding?
This is our second year budgeting level funding, and we had a slight increase the prior year.
So this is
Two consecutive years of, this will be our second consecutive year of level funding.
okay, thank you.
And they actually, in some ways, it's actually slightly decreasing because some of the grants that we had seen in the past, they're saying, oh, well, you're getting ESSER money, So it's wrapped up into that. Like we've gotten a safety grant. Now we won't spend, we had gotten some cameras with the safety grant in the past and things like that. We won't purchase those this year, but it's actually, some of those are being tied up in the ESSER grant, or they're saying you're getting funds, so we're not going to give you those this year. Seeing that.
We talk a little, sorry, somebody else have a question?
I had one, but you can go first.
Yeah. Can we talk real quick more about the laptop purchase at 390,000? What's the process that we're going through to do this? Is this did we do an RFP to find a company that would provide the service? Is this the best rate we can get? Is it the best computers we can get for that price? And then if I heard Dr. Messinger correct, it's about 70,000 a year on the lease right now. So over 5 years, we would be paying more than we currently do under a lease arrangement. I just want confirmation that this is the most cost-effective approach for us to go, and the process that we're going is the most cost-effective approach.
We did not do an RFP. These were quotes that I obtained from our normal reseller. Sorry if that wasn't well heard. We did not do an RFP. We have a reseller that we've been purchasing our Dell Chromebooks from for many years. They've done well for us. So I obtained quotes from them based on kind of volume pricing, and we're looking at about $1,500 a unit when we're looking at buying roughly 250 units. If an RFP is needed, we can certainly look to take that approach.
Are there at least other bids we could get without, a full RFP process, but are there other places you can go to get a competitive bid?
We could certainly look at other resellers. I mean, are you concerned about the make and model or
No,
okay.
1,500 a unit seems high to me. I'm not an IT guy, but that seems pretty high to me. Is that industry standard for schools?
For a laptop that will support multiple monitors on a Thunderbolt platform, for a docking station to support a smart board and a monitor on the desk and all the peripherals that our teachers typically do plug into them, yes.
Okay.
I would say somewhere between 1,300 to 1,600 would be, it's about the same price point as a MacBook Air for those districts who tend to go the route of MacBooks.
Okay.
Does that include the docking station, or would the docking stations be
The
additional?
price included here was inclusive of docking stations and laptops together, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And it is two things. One, that it doesn't, the state, it is a state contractor, so that there's a process that we need to go when they're not, and then there's a process that we need to go when they're not. But the other thing is, it is a step, it is an improvement over the computers we have. I mean, that is, I want to make sure that we're saying that.
Sure, that's certainly the hope.
But part of the problem has been, there have been quite a few problems with the ones we have. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think the conversation was, we're sending them back to get fixed and trying to avoid some of that. The ones that we got in the lease were actually used before they came to us for 2 to 3 years.
Right, we're leasing equipment that was 2 to 3 years old when we started that lease. So they're a little long in the tooth, and we're doing a lot of RMAs and returns. The company who's handling that has difficulty getting parts to keep them repaired quickly enough for us. So, we're in kind of a bad way when it comes to that, sure.
Are those repairs currently covered under the lease agreement, or is that an additional cost to the district?
They are for the laptops, as long as it's not accidental damage, they are covered. Unfortunately, when the agreement was signed, the docking stations are being leased, but are not covered by a warranty. So that was a bit of a challenge. We've had to purchase a few replacements on the kind of secondary market.
Okay.
I just want to piggyback off of that. Is there a agreement with the company that you're dealing with now as far as for these computers we'll be buying, as far as delivery and availability? I know in a school district that I'm fairly familiar with, there was a whole set of Chromebooks that were supposed to be delivered in September and didn't get there till probably December because they were on a boat coming over from China. So just because we're not going to be leasing, now we want to make sure we have the delivery of these. Is there a way we can guarantee that?
I've been talking with our reseller. I should also mention that I believe the pricing that we obtained is through a CoStar's contract. So I apologize. Should have said that earlier. It is through the state CoStar's contract. But I've been working with that reseller, and basically once every 1 to 2 weeks, they've been telling me if there is any change in Dell's availability to deliver. At this point, there's still a 2 to 3 week lead time. That's it. We've been really concerned about the Chromebooks more than anything because that has been a huge concern that lots of districts suffered last year. And yes, there is a very large semiconductor shortage right now due to COVID plus shipping issues on the West Coast. So there is some issues. It's been explained to me that Dell is one of the few companies that actually is still able to deliver product as reliably among the major players, the Lenovo's, the HPs, and so forth. Dell's one of the few that can meet its sales within a month.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry if that wasn't clear.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
Yes, the lease that we are in right now terminates in June of 2022, not June of 2021. So we will be purchasing these as part of next year's budget. We'll begin that swap out sometime in late fall of 2021, knowing that we need many months to migrate users and get them all configured. So that's going to take us quite a while. We need to have them all back to the lessor by the end of June of 2022.
That's my fault. I said June 30th, but I didn't specify the year.
Yeah, no, just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you for clearing that up.
That's a good clarification. Thank you.
And by the way, I really like your planning ahead, getting that transition time, not like right away, but that was well thought out. I have one other question, and that was, I think, to Gary, and about the cyber school. Just so I, in my head, kind of wrapped around, what you're saying is that the amount of students we're budgeting that they will all stay virtual as a prudent way of making sure that we don't get blindsided, but you're expecting more to come back.
I would love to be able to sit here and say, this is what the world is going to look like, come next fall. But I think there's too much uncertainty. I'm afraid that people that are making decisions about this may make it before August of next year and may just stay in it. We are going to have, I believe, we will have work to do to draw people back. And so we're preparing for the number to be, I don't want to see an increase either, but we're preparing for the number to stay the same from a budgeting standpoint.
Thank you.
Is part of the computer deal, when you talk numbers, Director Naum had said, it seems like it's almost the same amount of money, $70,000 a year for 5 years is $350. And that's, I don't know if it's $350 or $390 for this purchase, Leanne. What?
It was $390, that included the
So it's like
docking stations.
pretty much the same. Is there a money savings because at the end of the 5 years, we can resell them back? Because you had said with leasing them, there's nothing at the end. Because if we can't resell them back, it almost seems like
I don't know. I also don't know that every single one, I mean, ideally you get in a situation where you're starting to schedule, okay, we're going to replace 50 this year and 50 next year. And, and you're working through a cycle of replacing things that, because they don't all, we can buy them all at the same time, but they don't all go bad at the same time. I don't know why that is, but that's the way it is. In terms of selling them back, I don't actually know the answer to that.
We could certainly look into a resale, but I would imagine that after 4 to 5 years, at least some portion of them would still be useful for certain situations. So, we would do a little bit of that kind of Frankensteining of parts to keep a set of that fleet available for whatever purposes. And like Dr. Messinger said, we could start purchasing 50 per year, 100 per year to do a more regular refresh. The challenge right now is that I'm going from having 250 rented computers to having 0. And so we have essentially one of two options. We either do a massive capital purchase like this or go back to another rental. I think it makes sense for us to go this way and invest, and then hopefully be able to use some portion of that inventory for 5 or 6 years. But the other option would be to go back to another 3 or 4 year lease and take that approach.
So the lease computers, we're looking at a 3 to 4 year lifespan versus buying them. We're hoping for 4 or 5 or 5 or 6.
Yeah, I as far as I know, very few manufacturers will lease computers longer than 3 years. Yeah, I believe we can get 4 to 5 years out of these new laptops simply because the laptops that we're currently leasing, like I said, they were 2 or 3 years old when we started that lease.
Right.
So there's no reason that they couldn't last 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Correct?
I will also say that, I do think that we'd have to probably, we were talking, Leanne and I were talking about this. The ESSER funds make it possible to give us a fresh start with it. I'll be honest, it's hard to come up with that amount of money without those ESSER funds. Now, the ESSER funds also, there's a rationale for if we are going to use what happened with COVID as an opportunity to start to increase, the types of activities that we do with technology and, ultimately our course offerings to incorporate these virtual opportunities for our kids. It also makes sense to use ESSER funds to help us upgrade for the future too. So, when we were discussing, I was kind of okay with the increase in the computer capacity because, I think ultimately you're going to see that we're going to be able to increase what we're doing for our kids as well. So, but yeah, it's a lot of money. Yeah.
Did I hear correctly, though, that the $70,000 a year for the lease does not include the docking station? We pay additional money for the docking stations?
Yes, that is correct. I'm sorry, I don't know offhand. I can't remember offhand. I believe together the leases are, I believe it's 80 or 85,000 for the two together. I can get you specific numbers, but they're in my budget for this coming year to finish out that lease.
Thanks.
Leanne, could you talk more about the increase to the index at 3.8? I thought we were looking at something quite a bit lower than 3.8.
I'm not. As you can see, going up to we have to go to 3.7999%, which is the 3.8%, obviously. And at that, it would be 800. Let me get my exact number here for us. $885,000 at that, and it's to each homeowner. The average homeowner in Northern Ireland School District would be $94. I do have there a 2% increase, but as you can see, at a 2%, it doesn't even cover the increase to salaries. And on the budget synopsis that I sent to each of you with the details on it, you can also see that we had an increase to special education budgets. The technology budget has increased as well. And we had a bond payment that is now coming on for $685,000.
I guess my question is the 3.7999, that's the adjusted index that we would have to vote to Would we have to get special approval to go to 3.799?
That is what the state has given us,
Okay.
as we don't need any special exceptions or referendums or anything like that. It is what we are allowed to do.
Okay,
It was
It was lower,
less
wasn't it?
last year, yes.
okay.
The index changes yearly.
But we were anticipating a lower index than that. But that's the index we got from the state.
Correct. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't understand your question.
It was a poorly phrased question. I apologize. No, it is answered now though. So that's what we got
You're
from
just
the
giving me
state.
free reign to say whatever came to my
Go
mind.
ahead.
Was it 3.5 last year? I want to say we were looking at a 3.49,
Okay.
999.
Okay.
Okay.
The salaries, the 566, just so I'm clear, that is simply the increases in existing roles, nothing else there. It's not, there's no new people baked into that. It's just planned increases.
The only new person is the human resource position that
Okay,
we've
so
talked
that's
about.
the plus that human resource.
Right.
Okay.
Every other position, we're looking at some shuffling in terms of potential special ed positions due to student needs, but we believe we have some attrition to be able to just slide people in like we did last year to move someone from one spot to another.
And then from salary standpoint, we would add on top of that the 200 for virtual.
I think that's in there too. Is that in, that's listed in your salaries, the virtual teachers
200 is
They,
in the
they already exist.
566?
We're
are in
hoping.
there also.
That's not duplicated. Okay. All right. Yeah, I know we've beat the laptop thing up a little bit, but I would say that 390, I think that's a low number considering, if we are thinking it's 5 years, I mean, as I think Kirk said, they're not all going to last 5 years. Yeah. So, I mean, this will be savings over what we're seeing today with that maybe it's 80 some thousand. I think we'll see a significant increase in owning them, replacing them, repairing them. And I'm not saying that's the wrong thing to do. It may be the right thing to do. I just think our number might be low when we think about that long term. If we'd compare those two programs together, I think the lease would come out less. We're probably not getting what we need though. So I just think that it's low. On the charter school, the 350, I get that we're guessing that might stay flat. Man, I would love to see some campaign to say it's not going to be.
Yep.
We're going to get it back to, below 100, whatever. I don't know what catchy marketing campaign we do, but it's really, I mean, our goal is to have the kids that live here, come here, go to school here, and to be budgeting more and more for kids that are choosing to go outside. It doesn't line up with our goals, so to speak. So I get it that it might be a
Absolutely.
reality.
Yep.
It's just, that's a hard one to swallow. Back to the 94 per household. What average household cost is that based on?
It's $175,000.
I assume that is the kind of the average for this area right now.
Yes.
Okay.
And I can get updated. The courthouse can send us the median, the average, and give us all kinds of fun numbers to look at if we want. I can request that from them.
Yeah. And I think, just for clarity, you said we go up to 14.66, which would still be, if every other district did a 0, we would still be the lowest in Lebanon County.
Correct.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Are there any other questions for Leanne? All right, thank you, Leanne. This was very helpful. A lot to think about as we move forward to May.
Thank you all.
Kirk, did we ever get our student board rep? Wonderful. We have Island Zemba to speak to us as our student board representative.
Yes, I'm in.
Now you're on mine.
Okay. Well,
Don't worry about it.
okay. So, good evening. Student Council has been meeting Mondays at 3 p.m. over Zoom. We are making Student Council information brochures to spread the word about Student Council for next year. We are planning another staff appreciation, which we give the staff a thank you note and like a goodie bag of like treats and stuff. The senior class wars and donuts were delivered. We are excited to be able to have a musical this year. It's going to be Annie Jr., which will go on in May. So that's it.
Thank you, Island. All right, next up, we have our superintendent's report. Dr. Messinger.
Yep. I'd like to talk about computers. No, just kidding. No, I actually am going to keep it short tonight. I just wanted to revisit the conversation from last week. I certainly appreciate the board, and anytime we've had difficult decisions and the way that you have been able to share opinions and be able to talk openly and honestly and give me, information for feedback in the decision-making process. As you know, last week we took the opportunity to really see how many students that are in hybrid that would like to return. And so I sent out a form and we were able to gather names, and it came out to 177 students. After talking with Dr. Ebert, we started to break that down per grade level and look at it from a terms of a class average. And it comes out to less than 2 kids per class on average. And obviously there will be some classes that there's more kids, and there will be others that have less. And just to share with you my own personal experience, I know my son was in a class today and they asked, and he was the only one that raised his hand and said he was coming back, but he's in a class of almost all girls. So he has, in his own action research, has decided that boys want to come back and girls don't. So that seems to be the answer. But Dr. Ebert had already prepared lunches, and there's some logistical things to work out. For instance, there are kids sitting at a particular spot on a Monday and Thursday, and that same spot is being used by a different student on a Tuesday and Friday. And so the counselors are working to find a different spot for those students. I believe emails went out today. I know that Director Nam's kiddos got some, and at least they started today. And parents will be contacted this week. In the meantime, counselors are working through the schedules and working through some of those other logistics. We have transportation, making sure to work through all the busing. We have been bringing kids back the whole way, so this is a slightly larger number, but it is still a number that we felt we could work with. And I think it answers a lot of questions for us in terms of giving some choice for kids to come back, but yet continuing to offer the hybrid and continuing with our asynchronous Wednesdays. I think that it worked out for the best for a lot of our families. So I appreciate the feedback, and that was the big adventure over the past week, but I think we have a good answer. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you.
Gary, how many are staying in hybrid? How many in full virtual? I'm not going to go check your number. Then.
Yeah, I'll, the full virtual increased by 2. So whatever I gave you, was it 129
Yeah,
a while back? The hybrid actually increased by 2 as well. We were at about 400 that were in the hybrid. So doing the rough math, you're talking about 230 or so that stayed, and it went up a couple. There were a couple that did move to the hybrid. Whether or not whether that was related or not, I don't know. But so we're in the about 230 to 240 range.
Okay.
Can you please convey to Dr. Ebert and the rest of the administration our gratitude for the hard work that you guys have had to do over the past weeks?
Is there any old business for discussion this evening? Moving on to our public input session. Those wishing to make public comment were asked to submit that request by 4 o'clock this evening. Mrs. Martin, am I correct that we do not have any public comment this evening?
That's correct.
Thank you. Moving on to our items for board action. It should be noted that public notice was given for this meeting in accordance with Act 84 of 1986. That brings us to item 8. That is our consent calendar for this evening. That includes items 8.1 through 8.9. May I have a motion to approve these items as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. Then we move on to item 9. These are items for board action, but they are discussion items that were not on our agenda last week. We'll start with item 9.1. Dr. Messinger, would you like to introduce it?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to ask Mrs. Martin to just give a quick overview of this. This is in relation to our bond funds that we received. She had to do some shopping.
Yes, so we need a place to deposit those bond funds once they arrive, and we are scheduled to have those bond funds on April 15th. So I did make a call to other business managers in the area to see what they recommended, what they were using. Unfortunately, none of us are really thrilled with the rates we're currently getting on our investments. So in the bond world, it helped us get a really favorable bond and get some premium on it. However, the flip side is that you don't get much return when you do invest those monies for a little bit that we're going to have it in there till we start spending it. So I looked at one other in-house investment firm with the firm that we use to go out and get the bond, and also Fulton, which is where we currently have some funds. And I watched presentations and sat through both of them and discussed them. Neither rate was amazing. However, Fulton seemed a little bit better. They do have some fees associated with theirs. However, the rate was higher enough to offset those fees and still give a greater return, in my opinion. So we will be going with Fulton. We already have a relationship with them. And this is what Cornwall Lebanon uses and is happy with them. And it's called a sweep account where they invest the funds for us. Okay, thank you.
I believe that we can move ahead with item 9.2 and the others and do just one vote this evening.
I'll do everything in 9. We have resignation of an instructional assistant at Jonestown Elementary for you. As you know, we've been talking about some retirement things, and we were able to work with the union, had a great meeting with union representation, including the PSEA regional representative who came in, and then Stock and Leader got to give us their advice and put things together for us. And we have 2 MOUs. And the reason why there's 2 is there's some tax implications if you offer a cash incentive. So in other words, if someone decides they want a lump sum payment in a paycheck versus a health sheltered annuity or a 403B, there's some different tax ramifications there. So there's 2, they're identical other than the way the money is then paid. And then in the very next one is obviously we wouldn't do an MOU with the classified staff. However, We have the same exact incentive and retirement plan there for them as well. We will send an email tomorrow to all staff to make sure that they double check to see if they're eligible and want to consider it, and then they have until the end of the month to inform us. In addition to that, as I discovered today, we have not, as a district, always put things on board agendas in terms of bids. In this particular case, we're at the point where over the next few months, actually, we'll probably each month be starting to get some advertisements to approve to go out to bid. This is the first one, and this has to do with the turf field. We are actually trying to do this one a little earlier than the field house, because if everything gets approved, and it is on track right now, by May, they will be able to install the turf over the summer, and it will be ready for competition next fall. The field house would not have been. So the field house is going to wait until October after the last football game, and then we will get that moving for the season after that. So we're going to go out to bid, and the advertisement for the bid is there. I do want to apologize because that was not on initially, and after speaking with Brooke today, we decided that it's in the best interest of the district to make that decision as a district and put a district approval and stamp on it. Obviously, after bids are received, you'll also then have to approve and award the bid. Okay.
I wanted to just make one comment looping back to talking about the bond that we discussed earlier. I don't know if this was said publicly, but the bond amount was, correct me if I'm wrong, Leanne, 24.995 million.
Right, that's what we would, and we,
And we are receiving almost 27 million. So that I don't completely understand the finances behind all of that. When I signed all the papers, the lawyer told me it was legit and legal, so I trust that. Being able to loan a smaller amount and receive a larger amount of money, I mean, 25 million is a large amount, but we're getting more than we're loaning, and to me that seems like a really good time to loan money.
And I know Brad Remming explained that initially, but do you have a layman's term explanation? Or I didn't prepare you, and Director Bucks and I were talking about 62 different things today, and I failed to warn you about that.
I don't feel like I can add anything to what Brad had said at his presentation. I don't feel I can add anything to what Brad had said at his presentation with just adding more confusion, but if you'd like me to get a little brief summary, I can send that to you guys in addition to what I had emailed out the day after the bond. But do you recall that we got additional money and our payment was actually lower than what we had anticipated in January? So it was like two positives. Maybe is that layman's terms? We got two goods out of it, so.
And I do remember the notification saying that the bond would be just under 25 million, and that reduced costs or fees. And so I want to acknowledge and thank anybody who was involved in that process. I assume you were involved in that as well.
Brad recommended it and we approved it that day.
Thank you.
Yep.
May I have a motion to approve items 9.1 through 9.5 as presented?
Motion to approve.
May I have a second? Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. We move on to item 10. That is our reports from our representatives. First is our Career and Technology representative, Director Klein.
The only thing I have to report this month was just like we just did, we were talking about high dollar budget items for the upcoming year. And the biggest project, or every year CTC picks a project to work on. And this year they're going to repave the driveways and the roads surrounding it. And that's going to be the major project for the upcoming year. That's all I got.
Thank you. Then we will move on to our IU13 rep, Director Murray.
I don't have an update or.
Okay. And then item 3 will be our legislative PSBA liaison. Director Sekelic was unable to be here this evening. Does anybody have anything to add to that area? I know there's always a lot of information in our inboxes.
Can I just put out another call for board members to contact our legislators, specifically to talk about charter school reform and other issues? I think we can get a lot of traction if we make phone calls, and that can be helpful. I intend to do so. And then also, just following from a email from Gary this morning or yesterday, I forget. Stockton Leader is holding the school law update seminar. I think if ever there's a year for us to be educated on changing laws, this is the year. I've already registered. I would encourage everyone else to do the same.
Thank you for adding to that, Director Nam. And I wanted to kind of chime in on the Stockton Leader school law update. That the date of that is Thursday, April 29th. That is in the evening at 6 o'clock. If you're occupied that evening, I believe that there's a PSBA sponsored school law update the day before. That registration would be through PSBA. Another PSBA sponsored event, every month they have a monthly all school directors exchange, kind of a round table with all school directors, I believe in the state. And that is the third Thursday of the month. That is at 12:30. If you email our representative Autumn Ullman, she'll send you the link that you can easily join monthly for that. And one last thing, I did attend the Advocacy Day, the PSBA Advocacy Day on March 22nd. That begins with a presentation by the PSBA advocacy people that talk daily on our behalf. And then from there, we individually or as small groups met with our representatives in Harrisburg. My representative in East Hanover Township is Representative Sue Helm. So it was myself and a couple folks from, I believe it was at Upper Dolphin School District, spoke with her, and we hit on 3 main points. One of those was charter school funding reform, and for us, as well as the other school districts that were represented there, we very clearly told her that charter schools are now occupying about 5% of our school budgets each year. And so I believe she heard that. Hopefully she can take that back to others and make some change there. The second thing that we talked about was hopefully moving towards some mandate reliefs because in school districts, we definitely deal with a lot of costly mandates. Some of those mandates are very important. Some of them maybe are less important. There's a Senate Bill 73 and another companion bill in the works where hopefully will open doors for schools to have waivers for those mandates, potentially saving school districts a lot of money there. And then lastly, the other thing that we talked briefly about at the end was just ongoing systemic budget and funding pressures. One thing that I brought to Representative Helm's attention is that the state funding for public schools for Pennsylvania, we fall 44th in the nation. All others, well, not all other states, 43 other states are funding their schools more so from the state level and lesser from the local level. That's one of the reasons why our local taxpayers end up bearing such a burden. And I believe that that also increases the differences between the haves and the have-nots in school districts across the state. So I really conveyed that we need help in funding our schools so that we can continue to provide a quality product for the next generation. I believe that is enough about the legislative report or discussion. Is there any new business for discussion this evening? Couple dates to remember. Next month, we have our committee meeting on May 4th, and then our traditional voting meeting on May 11th. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
May I have a second?
Second?
Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. This meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone. Take care.